Alright, I did it. I beat Age of Imprisonment. I beat through the story about a week ago, and now I'm finishing up some of the post-game stuff. Not quite done with that, but I will be in a few days. And, well, we're going to talk about what happened in Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 through the end of the game. We're going to talk about what we missed, because boy did we miss some stuff in this game. But it's okay, because we're also going to talk about how to fix it. Using the framework of the game, I'm going to essentially rewrite the story to fit in all of the missing puzzle pieces that the game developers left out. So, stay tuned. I'm Vince, and this is Vincendio Gaming, where we are going to be talking about Age of Imprisonment. We're going to have a little spoiler discussion going through the end of the game here. I do have a video prior to this one where I go over my thoughts on chapters 1 through 4. And so if you are curious, you want to watch that, it's about an hour-long podcast-style video talking about my thoughts. This video is going to be much the same, not a ton of editing. I'm just going through, talking about my thoughts that I have written down in my notes. And then my computer's down here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I mean. And what else? I think we're ready to get into it. So, if it's not totally obvious by the title and everything so far, I'm going to be talking about spoilers, okay? I might even be having like cutscenes playing back here, or in the B-roll I'm going to have gameplay, so full spoilers. And I will just start off by saying, if you're watching this video and you have not played the game and you're like, who cares? I don't really care about being spoiled. I will say, if you're a little bit interested in the game, you should go in without spoiling it, because in my opinion, if you are spoiled, it kind of really ruins your motivation to want to play it, since the main, unless you just really like Hyrule Warrior's gameplay, the main draw is what happens in this story, and it really does take to the very end for you to get that satisfying answer. So, if you're planning on playing it, please don't watch this. Come back later, save the video. But with that, let's get into it. We start here with Chapter 5, Into the Fray. I think right before this, they talk about their plan to attack the castle, and so you have this roundtable discussion with Rauru and the sages, and he's like, hey, we are going to attack the castle head on, and if we can take this castle back, we'll be in a good spot. If it just so happens that we have no chance of fighting Ganondorf here, then we're going to fall back. We have a plan B. And essentially, our plan B is to lure him underground, under, the spot where modern Hyrule Castle is. And there are some spots here with sacred power enhancing effects. And so if we can trap him in this spot, then we might have the advantage. We might be able to take him here. So after that, we ride on the flying arcs. I don't know what they're called, but the flying arcs that we saw from Tears of the Kingdom. And this is, gotta say, super cool factor. Like, there's one part where Minoru is flying the main arc, and I was kind of like, does Minoru need to use her spirit powers to fly this arc? I mean, there's like 10 other mini arcs that don't need her powers. It doesn't really make sense that she needs to fly this, but it's also just like, okay, this is super awesome. Like, this is cool. I can let that nitpick slide. What else? Then, the opposite of cool factor. They show Ganondorf bringing back the Archfiends. All 4 of them just come back to life. Actually a terrible decision. Like, I don't know why they did this. And yes, it did make that part of the game a little worse. I think that's all still part of this level. Next level is the Battle of Hyrule Castle, so eventually they do land there. I think also in that first level in Chapter 5, you get to fly as a construct while the arcs are in the background, so that's really cool. But they finally do make their way to the castle. You do this long, arduous battle to get into the castle, and then there's like swarms of enemies coming in. It was a really cool level. And then you get there at the front door, and Rauru's like, alright, let's use my Triforce attack. Zelda's like, I'll help you, and like this little tiny beam of light hits Ganondorf, and he's just like, no thanks. It's like, okay, so they didn't stand a chance at all, and I don't know why they had a lot of just like intense stares of like, And Zelda had like some look, but you know, obviously they're like, we don't stand a chance. We gotta book it out of here. So that's what they do, as we knew, because we knew what was gonna happen. You have that a lot in this game, where it's like we see cool scenes, but we already knew that that was gonna be the answer. So not super surprising, but it's not bad. I like all the cutscenes. Quality is great. Now let me get track of back where I was on my notes. So they fall back to the area in the depths where the light power is strengthened. Again, we did know that from the Masterworks book, and someone in the comments on one of my previous videos pointed that out to me. So if you were someone who did keep up with the Masterworks, you know that we knew that as a community, we knew that. Still cool to see them explain it though. I think the Demon King is ensnared. That is the level that comes up after they realize they have no chance. So this level is them getting back to their plan B spot, okay? So when they finally get there, the Calamo and the Construct have to stay on land to distract Ganondorf's army, because they jump into the hole to get into the depths, and Ganondorf's like, I don't need to follow you, I can just send all of my enemies down there, which I think actually he does both. He goes in and his army comes, and they're like, no, we knew this would happen. If he sent his army, we wouldn't stand a chance. Although I think they could. But they needed an excuse for Calamo and the Construct to be on land. So the excuse is, hey, if y'all stay on land, then the army will stay on land with you. You'll be the distraction. And us, 6 or 7 people, we can go and defeat Ganondorf alone down in the basement. The depths. So that's what they do. And this was a good level too. It was like a 2-part level. You do the first half of like Raru's team retreating, and then the second half you're stuck with Construct and Calamo, and you have to defeat the last of these Archfiends, which is Grim Gibdo is the last one that you have to beat. And like again, all these levels were really cool here at the end of the game. The only thing I didn't like about this one was like the Grim Gibdo at the end when I know they say that the Construct is like damaged, but he does not feel, he feels like a superhero. So like, yeah, I can never feel this effect of him being tired, but apparently he is kind of tired, and the Grim Gibdo just like rips off her arm and throws it, and it stabs the Construct, and there's like a split-second scene where Calamo's just like, no, don't leave me, and like, I just cannot get emotional about that. I thought it was like laughably bad. For one, I'm just like, if the bone of Grim Gibdo's arm is weak enough to be ripped off, then how is it going to be a strong enough of a thing to actually like do damage? Like, I would think it would hit him and just crumple because it's so weak. Whatever. It's a nitpick. It's really a nitpick. But they did much better emotional scenes between Calamo and the Construct at the end. That one was not a very good emotional scene of them. But anyway, it literally made me laugh out loud. It felt so cheap. But especially because the Construct is still like, he like almost dies, but then he's just like gets up. The next scene you play is literally him fighting the Forbidden Construct, and he's like stronger than ever. So it's like, did he really come close to dying here? Because it felt like it just felt, I don't know. It did not feel, it felt out of place, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, okay. Then we get to the last level. You can see like the ending of this game really wrapped up quickly. The levels were at least extremely cool, and I think pretty long as well. But the ending of this level, we know is going to be them fighting Ganondorf. We've seen the scene from Tears of the Kingdom, like the best scene of all time, of gaming of all time for me. And I guess I've not played a lot of games because I mostly stay on Nintendo, but one of my favorite cutscenes of all time. The ending with the parallels of Raru's sacrifice, and then on the surface, as you're fighting the Construct, you get the Construct sacrifice. Like, you see those scenes in tandem with each other, and it is just absolutely awesome. This is why I'm saying, for those people, if you're watching this, even though you haven't played the game, like if you're getting spoiled through this, that is a scene where it's like, that makes the game worth it. Like, this is why I'm playing all of this repetitive gameplay, was to see a scene like this. It really is that good. So, it's very well done. Honestly, it did kind of save the game for me, because you're going to see in the future of this video that I have a lot of negative thoughts, but the scenes are well done, and I can't argue with that. So, there was one part, though, you know, if you've been watching my previous video, you know, like, one thing I'm waiting for is where in the heck is the Master Sword? Well, they show us a Master Sword. Somehow, this was a scene where, like, the construct is fighting the forbidden construct, and it's like the last bit of it, and the construct, like, pulls his arm out, and a energy sword shaped in the form of the Master Sword starts to appear, and I'm like, they're doing it. Like, they're creating the Master Sword. And then it's like, no, he kills the forbidden construct as if it was the Master Sword. Like, I was watching it and I was like, whoa! And then I was like, wait, what? Like, what? That's it? What is this? I don't know. I don't know about that one. But that's what happened. We're just talking about what happened. If you know what happened there, if you can explain why he was able to just summon the Master Sword, please tell me in the comments, because I do not know what happened there. And I've been trying to stay away from other people's videos, like lore videos and all that stuff. I'm trying to stay away from that so I can have, like, original thoughts. And I did finish this game about a week ago, so I have been sitting on it for a while, but I wrote these notes about 2 days prior to recording this, just to really flesh out my thoughts. So let me stop rambling. Next, the final confrontation, and then chapter 6, if you remember, chapter 6, they happen, like, back to back, just as an FYI. But, okay, so you get the emotional scene here that I mentioned earlier is well done, where Calamo wants to lay down his roots now with the remains of the construct. Okay, so another very well done moment. I feel like it would have been more powerful if the construct was actually a character instead of just like this flat-faced robot that doesn't have any emotion. I've got to say, it did feel a little forced, where Calamo's like, oh my gosh, we've gone on this adventure together, and all of the summary events of the adventure are him saying, hey, don't do that, where are you going? And then the construct just going anyway, and then Calamo saying, fine, I'll go with you. Like, every single moment is just that. So it was kind of hard to buy into the emotional string that they're trying to put in, but at the same time, it's like, I can see the construct just sacrificed its life, and Calamo is like, as someone who was very selfish, Calamo sees this selflessness, and I think that's what connects him to the construct in a way that's like, wow, I'm grateful for your existence in my life. So I'm gonna continue our journey together. I'm gonna set roots in the ground, and we are going to be together forever. So anyway, I get that they really wanted the construct to be Link. Like, it almost feels like the developers were like, we really want Link. And then Nintendo was like, you've got to make it canon. And they were like, but we really want Link. That's what it feels like. Because all the way down to the no talking allowed. Like, the construct does not talk at all, and I really think that's because that's what Link would have done. But if it was actually the voice of the sword, like Fi, like we were talking about, I think it would have brought the connection between her and Calamo. Like, they could have actually formed not a romantic relationship, but an actual friendship, and I think it would have made the game better. All right, a few more bullet points here. We learn that we can't let the future Hyrule people know about the Night Construct technology. It would be too dangerous. This is so cheap and just totally breaks the immersion of the game for me. I know it's because these characters aren't in Tears of the Kingdom, and they had to make this canon. If it wasn't Nintendo telling them, it was like the Koei Tecmo higher-ups because of the fallout from Cage of Calamity and how people wanted that to be a canon experience. I think the heads at Koei Tecmo were like, no, this needs to be canon if we're gonna sell this. We can't go back on that. And so what it turned into was like, we're gonna make a game that we want to make and make it canon, instead of being, we're gonna make a canon story. That's what it feels like to me. And I'll just say that again because I know that's confusing. Instead of saying, I'm gonna make a unique, original canon story that fleshes out the world, it turned into, I want to make a game, but I have to make it canon, so I'm gonna move some pieces to make it fit. That's what it feels like to me. So, just to keep going, we learned that Calamo is not the Great Deku Tree. A lot of people were disappointed with this, but a lot of people also did tell me this in the comments of other videos, unfortunately, so I did know this going in. I wasn't super surprised about it. But it's at least not just a random tree. It is actually the ancient stump. So I don't remember this too much, but once I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I remember this spot. I went back. Yeah, so I'll show some other footage on Tears of the Kingdom where it is, just so you can see. But I don't remember playing it too much in Tears of the Kingdom, but it's also not a terrible explanation. And apparently some people were kind of, when playing Tears of the Kingdom, surprised about what this big tree was. That just never struck me. But that's not a bad thing. Not a terrible place to end Calamo's story at all. I think it missed the potential of being the Great Deku Tree, and I think the Great Deku Tree would have been a better answer for Calamo's character, but it's not terrible. So just before we move on, I know it's the ancient stump. I think there might be some confusion on it online. I'm not super sure, but if you go to this level, I did not mean to do that. If you go to this level on the map, you can see, so like this is Hyrule Castle right here, modern day Hyrule Castle, and that final level is right here on the left. So I'll show you this exact spot in Tears of the Kingdom, and you'll see that it is where this big tree stump that's cut down. In Breath of the Wild, it was just a stump, but in Tears of the Kingdom, they made like a little path underground, like a cave thing for it. So it's definitely what Calamo is, just based on where that level location is. So that's that. Then the last bullet point I have is the post game. So honestly, I'm not totally done with it, and you can see it here on the background at the time of me making this video. I've still got a few little things. Most notably is there's this little Linalia 100% completion video, and I've seen the thumbnails of videos for it online. I'm really just trying to stay away from it because all of my motivation to finish the post game will be gone if I do that. So I'm gonna keep playing. If I think this adds any significance, I'll tag it on to this video before the next part. So you'll see it like right now in a few seconds, if it's of note. But other than that, the post game has mostly just been reading a bunch of conversations like these that I still haven't opened. I was like really hoping they would be more than what they are, but they're really just insignificant text conversations. Unfortunately, they're pretty one-dimensional. Like the one with Minoru was just about how some of the Stewart constructs are really smart and can help you find books. And then like some with like the original cast, like Pastos and stuff, they just talk about like eating or something. I don't know. I read through a lot of it today and I don't really remember what a lot of them were because they just weren't that significant. And then the rest of the post game is me trying to sort out my freaking Zonite steel, because every time I do a level I get steel and I have nowhere to put it because I don't want to level up the construct's medium grade weapon when I need a high grade weapon, but I can't get the high grade weapon yet because I need to beat other levels. So this loop of trying to figure out where to put my Zonite storage. So far, post game, not super fun for me, but I'm still doing it, and we'll see what this little message is at the end of the game. Okay, so that's what happened in chapters 5 and chapter 6. The next part of this video is going to be what we missed. There were a lot of outstanding questions from Tears of the Kingdom that I wanted answered in this game, and a lot of them are still unanswered. So these are not in any particular order. Like I said, I've been writing these down on my phone throughout the last few days since I beat the story, and I'm just going to go one by one on what we missed. So number one I have here, where were Koeme and Kotake, the two underlings of Ganondorf? We know them from Ocarina of Time. They become Twin Rova. We thought we would see more of them in this game, maybe even play as them. They were nowhere to be seen after like chapter 2, where they tried to kill Artie and fail. What the heck? Next, why did they not make Calamo the Deku Tree? This isn't really an unanswered question, but it is a missed opportunity. That's why I'm having it on the list. Where is the Master Sword? Not the current Master Sword that Link is going to bring back. We know that happens at the end of this game. Even though it happens at the beginning of Link's journey, it happens at the end of Zelda's journey. We always knew this. So I'm not talking about the future sword. And I'm not talking about the, what I call it, the like fake lightsaber sword that the construct brings up at the end of the fight here. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the original Master Sword that would have existed in the past and gone through time until Breath of the Wild Link finds it, or, you know, Ancient Hero Link at the Ancient Calamity. There is a sword at the beginning of this Hyrule that should exist, that Link would have picked up in Breath of the Wild, then broken in Tears of the Kingdom, and then sent that future sword back, which Zelda would have had, and then, so it would not have been on Hyrule, so Zelda would have had it, and then given it back to Link. So, like, there was an original sword. We do not see it anywhere. Very much a missed opportunity. We get no insight into Ganondorf's story, his mind, his character development. He already, in Tears of the Kingdom, was, number one, extremely menacing, and the voice acting saved his, like, whole lack of a story. But we really thought going into this, we would see some pre-Stone, pre-Demon King Ganondorf, like, reasoning as to why the heck he hated Hyrule so much, other than just they have power and stones and I want that. Like, we did not really see a lot of Ganondorf's journey at all. No playable Ganondorf either. That was for me like a shoot. Like, surely, I didn't mention even this in the post game that I just finished talking about, but like in Age of Calamity, you unlock like 3 or 4 characters in the post game, and in this one, you unlock nothing. It is absolutely absurd. So Ganondorf is missing. Sonia should have been playable from chapters 1 through 2 at least, and those chapters should have been longer. And then I already talked about Kotaki and Koeme. They should have been playable as well. And the Forbidden Construct. That's mostly the Night Construct's moveset. A skin. Give me something. It's crazy. I will say, at the time of recording this, they mentioned that we're going to get the sword of the Construct, like the red sword. But, like, seriously? Like, why not at least a skin to play as with the Forbidden Construct? It's crazy. Missed potential with the extra cast. All of these guys... Sorry about that. All of these incredible people, Typhon, Kino, Cadlin, Lago, Pastos, Bratton, all of these. Why? They do nothing for the story. It's an absolutely terrible idea to have these people. And it's not that the characters are bad. It's that they should have had a part in the story other than just text that I have to read from random conversations to get to know anything about them. What else? We learn almost nothing about the ancient Zonai. They are just as much of a mystery in this game as they were in Tears of the Kingdom, other than one small detail that apparently the Night Construct technology is what killed them, or almost killed them. That's the only extra bit of info we get about the Zonai. It is actually absurd that they are so mysterious, even though we have Minoru's entire library that we could have gotten information on. Missed potential was showing the stories of the sages. We did get a lot of good stuff with the sages. I love the 4 sages after playing this game, but we still could have gotten so much more based on what they told us. Okay? The biggest thing, this isn't in my notes, so hopefully I don't have it later on, but the biggest thing is, like, just as an example, like, we meet Kia and she says that the Forbidden Construct has just killed her father. Why the heck don't we see a scene of Kia's Zora's domain getting attacked and then the father dying? Like, why isn't that the first level you play with as Kia, is her fighting the Forbidden Construct? It's so easy. You don't have to change the character. Like, it's already there. Just actually show us it. It is crazy. Okay, I'm getting too mad. Gotta calm down. Okay. Alright, did I miss something with the Great Sky Island? Because in all of the Sky Island maps, we don't see the Great Sky Island, and I thought that was weird. So, I don't know if I'm missing something. If you know, in the comments, please tell me. Do we see that in this game, or is it explained in Masterworks where the Sky Island comes from? Because it's not a level. It's not on here, and I wanted it to be on here. Okay. did the construct really need to be forgotten to history? Yeah, this is another kind of like more of a missed potential kind of thing. But did the construct really need to get forgotten to history? Did we need that explanation? Weren't the rest of the constructs of his type destroyed by the forbidden construct when the forbidden construct got created? So wouldn't that technology be like, isn't that a moot point? Because no one's going to look for this technology, and if they do, it's gone. So who cares? And if the fear that some technology will be abused in the future, if that's the reasoning and the fear of why they can't include his story in this text, then, or in the murals, then isn't that dumb? Because doesn't Zelda already know that Sheikah later on will be a dangerous technology that gets taken over by a form of Ganondorf in the future? So can't she be like, oh, don't worry guys, that's already gonna happen? Like, I don't understand why they had to do it. Actually, I do. The real reason for forgetting them to history is that, like I said earlier, this will explain why they're not mentioned in Tears of the Kingdom. Make it canon. And it's just not satisfying. Another one I have here, this isn't a big missed opportunity, but it still is a little question I have. There's no ancient hero, like the ancient hero from the 10,000 year ancient calamity. I know the events of that ancient calamity, they take place after this game, so it makes sense that we don't see the ancient hero. But the reason I put this on this list is because in Tears of the Kingdom, for beating all the shrines, you get the ancient hero's aspect, which turns Link, at least his physical appearance, into that wolf-like creature that is the ancient hero. So, like, I thought it was weird that we don't maybe see it spelled out for us, like, what that connection is and why that a reward in Tears of the Kingdom would be on the Temple of Time on the Sky Island, like with the Zonai stuff. Like, why is it there if they're not connected to it in any way? So, a little confusing there. But that's not a big hole for me. Okay, last few points here. There is still no Triforce explanation. After 4 games in this version of Hyrule, we still have nothing talking to us about the Triforce, what brought the Triforce into this world. They have all of this Triforce on the regalia, even here in ancient Hyrule, and no one talks about why. It is actually a jarring hole. It's really weird. How is the royal bloodline passed down from Rauru and Sonia if Rauru and Sonia never reproduced and never had a child? This is a big hole, because am I wrong? Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. But they, in Tears of the Kingdom, say Rauru has the power of light. Sonia has the power of time. Zelda, you appear to have both light and time powers. And then it's like, why is that? Hello, they're related. All of the princesses of Zelda come from this bloodline of Rauru. That's why they have the sacred light. Excuse me. Unless I'm misunderstanding that. I don't think I am, though. And so, how in the heck do they reproduce? If Sonia dies and Rauru gets frozen in time forever, and then Zelda becomes the dragon, like, what in the heck? How does the bloodline live on? Big mystery that they could have answered by simply giving a playable character that is a child of Rauru and Sonia. Last bullet point here. I wanted to see how some landmarks that we know from modern day Hyrule were formed. So I've got a few examples here. Dueling Peaks is split like directly in half. It's like one mountain that is split in half. And I'm pretty sure in some of the cutscenes for this game and in Tears of the Kingdom, when they pass through Dueling Peaks, it is not split. So I was hoping at some point in this game we would see maybe Ganondorf split through the mountain, or maybe Rauru use light power to cut through the mountain or something. I thought we would see something like that. Another few, I could be wrong about this, again in the comments if you know more on this lore, correct me, but I'm pretty sure Breath of the Wild suggests that Dinraal carved the path in Tanagar Canyon. And I think I don't know which mountain it is, it might be Hebra Mountain or Mount Lanayru, I don't know which one. But there's a big hole. And I'm pretty sure it's suggested that Naydra punched that hole through the mountain. So I say those things because those are some of the examples of landmarks that it would have been cool to see those things happen, since we're in ancient Hyrule and this hasn't happened yet. It would have been cool to see those things formed. Again, all of this, just missed potential. So that's it for this part of the list. We're going to get on to the next part of the video where we use this missed potential combined with the story we got, and we're going to form the new version of this game. And I've got to say right now, be warned, because if you haven't played this game, or no, even if you did play it, if you liked this game, I should say, once you see the fixed version of this game, you're not gonna like the product you had anymore, because you're gonna realize just how much they could have done with it. All right, let's get into it. All right, so now we've talked about what happened in the game. We've talked about a lot of the questions that didn't get answered, a lot of the missed potential in the game. The next part of this video, we're gonna actually use the storyline that we got from Age of Imprisonment, and we're gonna take all of these unanswered questions, all of this missed potential, and we're gonna make Age of Imprisonment the Vincento cut. This is gonna be my version of what I would have done with the game to make it a more satisfying story and a more satisfying experience. So you can see I'm in a new environment right now. I tried recording this last night. My phone died and I didn't realize I wasn't even recording for a lot of it, so we're trying this again. I'm doing this during my lunch break at work, so that's why I'm in a new environment, but I'm gonna put some sort of gameplay or footage over this anyway. Either way, we're gonna get into this, and I gotta say right now, like, if you've played the game and you liked it, after seeing this, you might not like what you got anymore, because I'm gonna make the game super awesome with my edits, okay? Let's go. Like I said, we're keeping the same framework of the original game that we got, so imagine all these changes, imagine them on top of what we already got. So right at the beginning with chapter 1, not going to change a lot there. I think what they did was actually pretty good. The only change I have is a gameplay change, not a story change. The gameplay change being that I would have loved to see an open environment that you can run around in, sort of like a hub world. I mentioned this in my previous video. It's basically like the environment you get from Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, another Warriors game. And basically there, instead of having the menu for your training, for your leveling up characters, creating weapons, instead of having that just be in a menu, you do have that option, but you also have the option to just run around and go to a physical place there to make those changes, make those upgrades. So I wanted that because I wanted to run around in Old Hyrule Castle. That would have been awesome. And it also makes the game feel bigger when you are able to have a free roam area rather than just a bunch of menus, just a big map with a bunch of icons, which is what you get currently with Age of Imprisonment. The next bullet point I wrote for my changes here is I would have gotten a lot more story related to Ganondorf before he turns into the Demon King. Like, I want to see Gerudo Town while Ganondorf is the chief, because we really don't see too much of that. We see like a scene of him sitting on a throne and telling Artie to go attack Hyrule, but we don't really see how is he as a leader. I would have liked him to not just be just menacing evil for the sake of being evil. I would have liked him to have some sort of reason as to why he wants to take over Hyrule. Why does he think that Rauru is not fit to wield the power of those secret stones? Why maybe Gerudo Town being in the desert, this might be explained in a game, but it's not really shown to us. If it is explained, it's maybe just through text, but like Gerudo Town is in a desert, less water, less resources. They could have used that as making some reasoning as to why Ganondorf wanted or was jealous of Hyrule. So I would have had more story scenes with that if I changed this game. Next change, going into around this area of chapters 1 and 2, I would have had Sonia be playable for these first 2 chapters. These chapters would have also been a little bit longer because of this added depth to Ganondorf, so it wouldn't have felt like she was only there for 1 or 2 levels. It would have felt like a more significant time. We would have gotten more scenes with Sonia to see how she is as a character, and really grown attached to her, even knowing that she was not going to make it through the end of the game. And then she would still be playable after you beat levels. You can go back and play them. You can play as her, even though it doesn't fit the canon of the story. You know, it's just for fun once you've already played through it. So that's why I think they could have kept her in. Okay. So that's kind of the only changes I have for chapter 1 and 2. You know, chapters 1 and 2 are kind of like the pre-Demon King. Then you have chapters 3 and 4 as kind of like the imprisoning war itself, taking back all of those places where Ganondorf has now had influence. You have to beat those levels and kind of regain your control and influence over the map. And then chapters 5 and 6 are like endgame. So, excuse me. Right now we're moving into the chapters 3 and 4 and things I would change there. So we first meet Kia, like I said, and you hear that her father has passed away because of the Forbidden Construct. But we never see it. So in my change here, we should have seen all of these tribes in more depth. Their first level for each of these sages shouldn't have been them just running away on a generic map. It should have been a map of that town. So Kia's level could have been her in Zora's domain. We would have seen how different it looks. Maybe it's underwater or something drastically different from what we see in Tears of the Kingdom. And we would have seen a battle where Kia is trying to fight her way out of Zora's domain because of the Forbidden Construct. Maybe the final battle of her level is fighting the Forbidden Construct with her father. And then, even if you beat the health bar of the Forbidden Construct, you still lose the battle, similar to what they do with Ganondorf at the end of the game, right? You win the battle, but you still lose that fight. So it could have been something similar where even though you beat the level, the Construct still wins, and still you get a cutscene where her father dies. That would have been really cool to see. Would have done something similar with all of the sages. Next is the original cast of characters, which should have been more integral to the story and the lore, at least. I would have made significant changes that I'm going to get to right here. So for Kino and Typhon, in other words, the two Hylian characters, this is how I would have changed them. So if you wanted original Hylians, we should have had one of these Hylians be the son of Rauru and Sonia. So this would fix the problem that we don't see any of their ancestors. We don't understand how their bloodline is passed. So one of these characters could have been the son of Rauru and Sonia, which would have been a flip because you would expect them to have a female, like a Princess Zelda of that time. But no, this would have been a young king, or a young prince in this case, but in order to explain why he is not in the final battle or in any of the cutscenes for Tears of the Kingdom, it's very simple. You do what you already did with Kino. Kino gets separated early on from Rauru and is on Kalamo's side of the story. Same thing could have happened here with Raru's son. And then in the final battle, Rauru knows that he's going to have to sacrifice himself. They show a scene in Age of Imprisonment where he's like, look, if we don't make it through, it's very possible that I'm going to have to sacrifice myself. So in this version that I'm making, he would have told his son, hey, look, I might not make it through this. Our kingdom has already lost Sonia. If they lose me too, we'll have no one. So you have to stay alive. You have to rebuild this kingdom after we finish this. So that would have been awesome to meet, essentially, who would have been the second king of Hyrule. Would have been awesome. The other Hylian character, instead of getting Typhon, we should have gotten an understudy to Minoru. This would have been a white-haired Hylian who would go on to continue studying under Minoru after the end of the war, and would have used the knowledge passed down from Minoru to form the Sheikah tribe, and then essentially dedicate their line of family, like their ancestors, or sorry, their descendants, would essentially dedicate themselves to protecting the royal family in the future of the kingdom. So essentially giving us an origin of the Sheikah people, which I don't know if we've ever gotten that. So that would have been an awesome way to utilize a second original character. And you'll see this theme here as I keep going with the original characters. It's that the original characters that they gave us are not bad. They're actually really interesting. We just don't see anything about them. So really all of the changes I'm making with them, other than these first two have the most dramatic changes. But with the rest of them, it's like they've got all the ingredients. They just needed to actually put them into the story instead of just giving us these random text conversations or random things to read as you upgrade their abilities. So, moving on, we have our Goron characters. In this game we got Pastos and Bratton. It's really Pastos that I think is more interesting. But so I would have had, essentially, instead of just meeting Agriston in chapters 1 and 2, where Agriston is just already kind of following Hyrule and already willing to comply with Hyrule, if you read Pastos' description in the character description on the game, he is actually part of a faction that is opposed to a unified Hyrule. He actually does not want the Goron people to be part of Hyrule. So very similar to how we could have seen this dichotomy with the Gerudo, a group of people who wanted to follow Ganondorf, a group of people who wanted to follow Artie. We could have seen this happen with the Goron people as well, a group of people led by Pastos who did not want to be part of Hyrule and part of Raru's kingdom, and then, you know, Agriston, who wanted to form that unity. So we could have had some scenes there, maybe even a level where they're fighting each other, and then something, you know, being the Demon King coming up, could have brought them together, and our first level there with the Goron could have been those two factions coming together. Maybe you start the battle with them fighting each other, and then halfway through the battle, the big dragon comes out of the volcano, and you now have to join forces to save, to get this common goal of saving the Goron people. So that's how I would have changed the Goron side. For the Zora characters, the one I want to focus on here is Cadlin, because it's very obvious that he's like adores Kia, and they do have some like awesome conversations together. Again, all red, none of them is through cutscenes. And so I would have just gone further with that and made Cadlin just be Kia's fiance. That would make him the actual king of the Zora people after the death of Kia's father. And so then together they could have had some scenes where Kia is able to actually have character moments and share how she is sad about her father's death, and then also have scenes where she is struggling to be the correct queen, and then she has Cadlin to kind of rely on, and they kind of balance each other out and give each other some character moments, because currently we don't really see that. For the Rito people, this one's the hardest for me, because I think both of the original characters we get are pretty generic. It's Vence and Pinnock. I don't really like either of them, honestly. I think I would have chosen to have at least one of these Rito characters be a female Rito character, and maybe use some sort of musical attacks, kind of like a callback to Cass, and just make her attacks, you know, instead of having the Gerudo people have rhythmic attacks, maybe her attacks could have been rhythmic, and it would have made sense because she's using music. So that's how I would have incorporated, that's the change I would incorporate for the Rito people. As far as how to put them into the story, pretty generic. I don't know, maybe just, again, like I said earlier, having the first level with the Rito people not just be after the destruction of the Rito village, but maybe have the first level be the scene where the village gets destroyed. So that's all I can really say about that. For the Gerudo people, we probably get the best story with the Gerudo people, because we actually do get scenes where, of course, we see Artie struggling to follow Ganondorf's demands, and then we also get scenes, I think it's like the beginning of chapter 4, where Artie is like, I don't deserve to be the chief, and then her friends are like, no, you would have been chief if it weren't for Ganondorf, you need to help us now. And she's like, okay, if you all really trust me that much, then I'll do it even though I don't think I'm worthy. So I like Artie's arc in that sense, and you actually do see those original Gerudo characters. I'm forgetting their names. I think it's Ronza and Shalani. So you actually do see them in those scenes. I just think they could have gone further. My only idea here is, like, I think Ronza already kind of looks like the kind of guard member that we see in like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, the kind of right-hand man to the Gerudo, I should say woman, to the Gerudo chief. So I think having Ronza just be that role for Artie could have put Ronza in the roundtable conversations where they're talking strategy about how to handle the imprisoning war. And I would have liked to see her, and Cadlin too for that matter, if he's like aligned with Kia in the same status as him being king, like it would have been nice to see both of them in these conversations instead of only the sages. And it would have made me want to play as them more. Next, we have Calamo. Calamo and the Construct being like by far the best original characters in the game, so much to where they're actually more interesting than the characters we already knew about. But so for Calamo specifically, other than his ending, which we will get to his ending, I think he is a great character. So I wouldn't change that much about him other than his ending, which I will get to. And now talking about the Construct, another one where they did a good job in his physical design and visual design, but I'm changing a lot with what they did with him in terms of story. So number one, there's no need for the Construct to have the Shard of the Master Sword as his core. So in this version of the game, we are just completely taking that out. The sword does not travel back through time. We did not see it travel back through time in Tears of the Kingdom. That is, I mean, it's kind of a retcon. So no, that did not happen in my version of the game. We already know that the Construct has a super advanced mind. Minoru and Rauru have scenes where they talk about this. It's not like the mind of a random steward construct or a random foraging construct. Like, these forbidden constructs like have a advanced AI mind, and so we would have just let that be the personality of this construct. Doesn't need the sword. Number 2, Ganondorf would still be able to possess one of these constructs the same way he already does. So we still have the forbidden construct. The only thing I'm changing is that instead of what we got in Age of Imprisonment, where Ganondorf's like, all right, this thing just took up my power and it's gonna just do its own thing and I don't really know what it's doing. All right, just let it wreak havoc. No, in my version of the game, that does not happen. We get this as an intentional move that Ganondorf makes, and he actually uses this construct rather than just letting it roam wild. Number 3, third change here related to the construct. So the construct's personality, like I said, it's going to have its own mind. It's an AI, advanced AI from the ancient Zonai that they created, and this is going to be the supercomputer voice. It's going to end up talking the way we expect Fi to talk. We never see Fi named in Breath of the Wild and Age of Imprisonment, but you've seen this in a lot of Zelda lore videos, that Fi is in those games. They're just never named as Fi. And then in Tears of the Kingdom, I've shown this in a previous video, Zelda actually calls it a she. So we know, even though we don't know that Fi exists the way we know her in these games, we do know that there is a voice in the sword, and we do know that that voice is considered female by Zelda's standards, at least. So that voice, before having been in the sword, is what this AI construct would have been in my version of the game. Fourth change. Oh wait, actually there was more to that. Because the construct will have its own personality now and sound like Fi, we will actually see a construct that has a character rather than just a stone-faced robot that is staring blankly like this and then occasionally gives a fist bump. Like, we would actually see a character, which is what I would want. 4, when Zelda hears the construct talk, so this is kind of like chapter 4 where they finally meet up in the Gerudo Desert, it would be clear to Zelda that the construct is the voice of the Master Sword. She would be like, hey, I recognize you. You're the voice of the Master Sword. The construct would be like, no, I don't know who you are. We've never met. Because this isn't the voice that Zelda has met and known in the Master Sword. This is the voice before it became the Master Sword. So it's like the origin of this Master Sword. So Zelda theorists, could say, if they wanted to connect all these Zelda timelines, they could say that this sword is maybe a second Master Sword. If you've seen my previous videos, you know how I feel about the timeline, and so I think this could be its own separate continuity altogether. But if you wanted to connect these timelines, you could say it's a second Master Sword, and essentially we would see it made in this game, and then the AI construct would put its consciousness in the sword, and then that's why Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Link's version of the Master Sword have that consciousness. So Zelda essentially would be meeting the sword before it became the sword, which would be super epic. And also, Zelda would know to trust this construct because she recognizes that voice, and so that's how Rauru and the rest of the team would come to trust the construct, despite having the forbidden construct causing havoc. So again, story points that we already see in Age of Imprisonment, just in my opinion, contextualize a lot better if you make these changes. And then the last change with the construct is going to be the ending, which I've already just kind of hinted at, but we're going to talk about it later when we get to more of like chapter 5 and 6 changes. Okay. If you've seen my other videos, you know where I'm going with it. All right, now we're getting to like end of chapter 4, basically the height of the war phase of the game. So the changes I have here is that the war will be so daunting. Rauru seems like we're just fighting hordes and hordes of monsters. We can't hope to overcome Ganondorf's power. Every time we make one step forward, we take 2 steps back because there's just an endless flow of monsters. So in the height of all of this, Rauru seeks wisdom and strength from the Guardians of the Springs. I think they're actually called Servants of the Springs. I wrote it in my notes wrong. But basically he knows his former Zonai ancestors, because of this forbidden process of draconification, he knows that the dragons are ancient Zonai. And so he goes to seek their strength. Even though he knows that they should be gone mentally, in Tears of the Kingdom we see that Zelda still has enough will to fight the Ganondorf dragon. So here it would be Rauru seeking the strength of these Zonai dragons and them having just enough will to help him with his fight, which would lead to 2 things that would have been awesome for this game. Number 1, gameplay as the dragons, similar to the Divine Beasts gameplay sections in Age of Calamity. So we get to play as the dragons, and then number 2, we would get super awesome cutscenes of them breathing fire, lasers, ice lasers. Farosh could summon an intense lightning storm over the Faerun region. We could maybe see the scene where Naedra breaks through the mountain. Like, that would have been super awesome to see, because currently we see absolutely no dragons in the game, and that is a shame considering their history with the Zonai. Absolute shame. Okay, next bullet point. This is more endgame stuff. This is after Demon King. So the Archfiends were totally fine. I thought it was cool to see that they came from, or they're kind of like less complete versions of the bosses we see in Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's cool that they're in here. I don't know how I felt about the voice acting. However, I think what I would have changed is I would have shown a scene where maybe some of the followers, like clearly Ganondorf would have had some followers that liked him. We already see Kotake Koeme, right? Maybe he had a few more. Maybe there were 4 followers he had that were kind of like not Koeme Kotake, so they were like a little less powerful. And it would have been awesome to see him sacrifice those 4 actual Gerudo people, sacrifice them and turn them into the Archfiends, and that explain why they are humanoid and explain why they kind of are able to talk, because we don't see them talk in Tears of the Kingdom. So yes, I would have had a scene like that, and it might be a little too gruesome, but they could make it rated teen. They could tone it down to make it fit the rating of the game. But that would have been very cool. And then another change related to that is in chapter 5. Instead of reviving the Archfiends again, which nobody wanted, what we would do then is, since the 4 Gerudo people that did not do their job, the next 2 in power would be Kotake Koeme. So he would now sacrifice them and form them into this combined ugly monster, which has both ice and fire power, and would of course be a reference to Twin Roba. So we wouldn't be seeing it exactly like we saw in Ocarina of Time in sort of like a humanoid witch, but we would see essentially a monster that looked the part of being both ice and fire powers. So that would have been my pre-final battle boss. And that would have been way more epic than having to fight the Archfiends again. Okay. Next bullet point I have is we should have seen the team seek guidance from the Great Deku Tree. We should have at least seen a version of the Great Deku Tree of this time, especially after Kalamo and Zelda sides join at the end of chapter 4. At some point they should have been like, hey, let's go see this Deku Tree. Kalamo would have been like, hey, my father, the originator of the Koroks, he will have something to say. He can help us out. No, we don't see any of that. So in my version, we do see that. And then in the version of the game we got, eventually the forest burns. So essentially we would have met the original Great Deku Tree. I say original, I just mean the Deku Tree of the past. Then we would have had the level where the forest burns. We would have seen the Great Deku Tree die, maybe before they're able to get advice from him, or maybe right after they're able to get advice from him. That's when the forest burns up. Something like that. I also think maybe the final battle, instead of being in the middle of Hyrule Field, could have been, or could have led to the Great Forest. And so essentially, that's when the forest burns down, the Great Deku Tree dies, but Kalamo then says, you know what, I'm gonna make it my responsibility then to be the new Great Deku Tree, because we need a Great Deku Tree. So this is essentially the bullet point where I am changing Kalamo's endgame. Instead of him becoming the Ancient Tree Stump, which by the way, he might be a version of the Great Deku Tree. His mouth or ability to talk might have been on the other side from what we saw. We do see that there are some Koroks kind of living in the tree, and they kind of have that little like seed-shaped light that we see in the Great Deku Tree in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. So it's possible that he was a Great Deku Tree and just didn't happen to be in the Sacred Forest, was in another forest. But either way, that aside, it would have been nice to see this like formally acknowledged. Number one, that there was a Deku Tree in the past, and number two, that Kalamo becomes the Deku Tree that we know in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. That would have been the ideal ending for Kalamo. And he could have still stayed with the Construct if the Construct followed them there, and especially with what I'm about to say about the Construct and Kalamo could have stayed together for all time, and it would have just been there in the forest instead of in a random spot on Hyrule Field. And so going with the Construct now, so we should have seen Zelda or the Construct seek out the power of the Master Sword, at least ask Rauru if they have a Master Sword in this time. Of course, they would have said no, because here's what I would have had happen. We would have a plot section. So similar to how Zelda realizes she's not in the past to stop Ganondorf. This is more Tears of the Kingdom, but she's not in the past to stop Ganondorf. She realizes instead, when she gets the Master Sword back from Link, she realizes, oh, I was never here to stop Ganondorf. I was here to take this Master Sword and use my sacred powers to turn into a dragon to heal it and take it to Link into the future. That's what her real story arc is. She has that realization. So in this game, Age of Imprisonment, my version, we would have had the construct, which being the consciousness of Fi, maybe it wouldn't have been called Fi, but the construct would have had a similar arc, a similar kind of realization that her task is not to stop Ganondorf either. That's Raru's destiny. The construct's destiny is to actually create the Master Sword using Zonai technology, and the help of Raru and Zelda's light power would help turn it from just a Zonai technology sword into the first Master Sword, or like the Master Sword in this version of Hyrule. So then, creating this sword, instead of it just being summoned out of thin air like we saw, it would have been a physical sword, would have been used to kill the forbidden construct in the Great Forest at the end of the game, and then it would have been placed with Calamo in the Great Forest, or what would be the Great Forest, right? So keeping them together, and then the construct would have passed its AI consciousness into the sword as a way of staying with Calamo forever. So it kind of a reverse. Instead of Calamo seeing the construct dying and wanting to be with the construct forever, so laying down his roots, Calamo's instinct to lay down his roots would have come from seeing the Great Deku Tree die. And then the construct wanting to stay with Calamo forever would have said, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to plant the sword here, and I'm going to put my consciousness in the sword so that I am with you forever. So it would have been a reverse. Again, you can't really do that with the version of this game that we got, because the construct doesn't have a personality. But in this game, my version of it, the construct would have a personality and a character and a flow, an arc. It would have had some development instead of just a blank stare. And yes, it would have ended up showing us the creation of the Master Sword. And like I said earlier, other Zelda theorists that want to believe all of these games are connected would have said, okay, we had the sword created from Skyward Sword, and now we have a new Master Sword for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I think that totally works. I think it makes more sense for these to be different parallel continuities, but regardless, we would have seen a creation of the Master Sword, a creation of this version of the Master Sword. Would have been super awesome. And then, so that's basically how the game would have ended. So we get to some changes that I make for the post game, which is simply gameplay changes that we would unlock some characters. Why can't we unlock characters? So we would unlock Ganondorf, maybe Demon King Ganondorf as well. Maybe get some levels where we're playing from their perspective, like the Forbidden Construct. We could have a level where we play as the Forbidden Construct, taking down Zora's domain and killing Kia's father. That could be a construct level instead of a Kia level. That would be great. And to be fair, we can still maybe see that, like that idea I just gave out, could maybe be DLC. I'd be very surprised if they did that, but could happen. We could get kind of DLC of the enemy's side of the war, and then get to play as Ganondorf, get to play as the Demon King, and get to play as the Forbidden Construct. On my version here, I would also have us play as Twin Rova, or at least Koeme Kotake as a kind of like dual character, kind of like Robbie and Purah in Age of Calamity. They're like two people, but they play as one character. I would like to have seen Twin Rova be that kind of thing, two separate Gerudo characters that fight as one playable character. If Twin Rova, the monster that I kind of thought up for my version here, if that's like a big boss level monster, then we wouldn't play as it. It might just be like a special move or something. But that's my post game here. So yeah, that's it. That is my version of Age of Imprisonment. What do you think? Does this make it better, or are my ideas all terrible? Let me know in the comments. Let's start a discussion going down there. Now that we've got full spoilers out of the way, y'all can leave your comments talking about the game. I will be reading the comments. This is a pretty small channel, so it's all about the conversation here. But if you do like this video, please leave a like, consider subscribing, maybe even sharing this video. I'm not trying to like be all into looking at the subscriber count and all of the likes and stuff. However, any activity on the video does help it get shared through YouTube's like algorithm, I guess, I don't know. But so the more people that watch it, then the more conversation we have. So if you feel inclined to do so, please leave a like and subscribe, and definitely leave your thoughts so we can get a conversation going. But just to summarize my thoughts on the game, I think there were scenes that were incredible. The Rauru sacrifice scene is one of the all-time best moments in gaming for me, like ever, and they made it even better in this game by having it paired with the Construct sacrifice. So really love the ending of this game from that perspective. Unfortunately, I think this game does make me lose some like consumer trust in the next Hyrule Warriors game. You know, Age of Calamity kind of burnt me a little bit with it not being the actual, it was like a story of the 100-year ago war, but it wasn't like the story. So that burnt me a little bit, and now this one has also burnt me a little bit, just not really living up to, granted, my pretty lofty expectations. I also kind of lost a little bit of consumer trust in the next Zelda game, like the next mainline game. I'm not saying I won't get it, because I definitely love my Zelda games, and I'm going to love the gameplay, I'm sure, and I'm sure, you know, the quality is going to be there. However, my expectations for what they can do with the story are going to be definitely tamed after what's happened with the last few games in this Breath of the Wild sort of universe of games. And then I feel like this game kind of marks, like I just said, the third miss with this version of Hyrule, and it's really sad to see. But so Breath of the Wild was incredible for what it was, especially. I know it's got its flaws, but like for where it was when it came out and what it was trying to do, it's phenomenal. Then Age of Calamity, like I said, was a story from 100 years prior to Breath of the Wild, but it wasn't the story that we wanted. It wasn't the story of what actually happened. It was just a kind of what could have happened story. So that's one miss. Then Tears of the Kingdom comes out, and I love Tears of the Kingdom probably more than most people. I played like 400 hours. I found all of the Korok seeds just because I loved playing the game. So I liked that, but it had so many holes. There were so many flaws. It did not really advance Breath of the Wild that much. Instead, it kind of formed its own thing, which made its own problems, and it made a lot of areas like the depths and the sky that it wasn't able to flesh out. It had the sages, which it wasn't able to flesh out, and it told the story from a way where you have to see it in the past instead of just playing as Zelda in the past, which would have been the ideal. So I will call that the second miss, honestly, Tears of the Kingdom being the second miss. And now we get Age of Imprisonment, which kind of has this promise to fill in those gaps and kind of rectify the story, and honestly for me it just didn't do it. So kind of the third miss in this version of Hyrule, and it's really sad because I think a lot of YouTubers, a lot of creators are kind of on this train of like, okay, well, you know, I enjoy this version of Hyrule, but I'm just so tired of it. Take me somewhere else. Give me a new art style. Give me something. And honestly, I still think the Zelda team can rectify this version of Hyrule. That's going to lead me to my next video. So like I said earlier, subscribe to stay tuned with my videos, because in the next video, at least my next Zelda related video, we're going to tackle what the next Zelda game, I actually have 2 Zelda game ideas that I'm going to lay out, which actually are in the Breath of the Wild universe that could answer some of the questions that the team has left out in the games we've gotten so far. So I hope you look forward to it. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and we will see you next time.